Okay, um, here I'm going to do a quick introduction to the first few sections of the Jack Goldstone book. It's the beginning of winter term, um, 2026. I'm just recording this on Tuesday, January 20th. So you still have about 10 days until these discussion posts, your first discussion posts are due. Um, but as you get started, I thought it might be helpful for you to see how I would take notes if I were in your shoes. These are the kind of things that I would be on the lookout for. Um, and what I'm going for really is a combination of your ability to discern what the author finds important and what the author is trying to convey to you, what Jack Goldstone is trying to convey to you, but also um, your reflection, your reaction, and how you receive that information. I want both of those. I don't just want one or the other. I want to see that you've grasped what the author is trying to do, and I want to see how you respond to that. That's the balance that I'm going for. That's the kind of individual, personal mastery that I want to see coming through in these discussion posts. You can focus very narrowly on one point or on another point, or you can cover a broad aspect of what is being done. I don't just want you doing the one side of things, that is summarizing the text, and I don't just want you um, giving your reflection on some ideas that have no connection to the text. So I'd like you to balance those two. Show me that you've grasped some of the key ideas that the author is trying to put forward here, and you've thought about it, and you've reflected on it, and now you have something to provide as a reaction post or as a reflection post. Okay, so that's again just going over what I'm looking at, and that's what my notes that I'm going to show you here in this PowerPoint are. These are the kind of things that I would draw out. One of the first big things that Goldstone does is he defines revolution. So these are, remember, not some kind of freestanding revealed text from God on high that says this is what a revolution is. This is Jack Goldstone's version. Now he's a very respected political scientist. He's a very respected scholar within the field. Otherwise, they wouldn't have asked him to do this book within the big series of Oxford University Press's very short introductions. So he's very highly esteemed, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that he says. That doesn't mean that you have to take his word as sociological gospel. You can challenge it, and you can kick around the ideas and decide if you think they fit. So the four main points he draws out are in terms of defining a revolution is that it requires some kind of forcible overthrow of a regime. It involves mass mobilization. It involves some kind of social justice vision, and it results in new political institutions. So those are the four big ideas. I don't want to spend too much time on them because it's up to you to read into them and determine what then constitutes a revolution, what falls into this category, and what doesn't in your view. What is being excluded, what is being included. And do you agree? Do you agree with this? So for this first portion of our class, we're talking about political revolutions in a fairly narrow context. There are lots of other contexts for revolutions that we can talk about: scientific revolutions, agricultural revolutions, musical revolutions, artistic revolutions, and we'll talk more about those. But for now, we're looking at these narrow political revolutions that Goldstone is interested in. So let's start here and make sure that we understand what he's doing, and then once we understand that, we can decide to what extent we agree or disagree. And I very strongly encourage you to engage with the text. Okay, what are the causes of revolution according to Goldstone? These are the ones that, if I were reading it, I would draw out. He looks at this idea of an unstable equilibrium. So he talks about a marble in the bottom of a bowl. He also has a great earthquake metaphor that I think is really interesting for you to take a look at. He talks about growing alienation and opposition among elites. So think about what that means. He's not just talking about the sort of rural subsistence farmers or proletarian factory workers. He's also talking about opposition among elites within society. That is, sometimes power holders, stakeholders, wealthy members of society. And then he also talks about the widespread popular anger at injustice, and this gets back to one of the causes, or one of the definitions, that is some kind of social justice vision. And that also plays into number 4 here, which is a shared narrative of resistance, some kind of shared vision. Not everybody has to have the exact same idea, but there's some kind of shared narrative of resistance. And then often a key point here is favorable international relations. So if you have a very, very powerful neighbor who is opposing a revolutionary movement within a country or political context, they can prop up that regime and they can prevent the success of a revolution because that revolution has unfavorable international relations. So favorable international relations often play a big part here. And again, I want you to give some thought to whether you agree, whether you disagree, and it's definitely okay to do both. And I encourage you to be active in the way you engage with this reading. So here, Jack Goldstone is defining a revolution, but he's also limiting it. He's also circumscribing it. And so you don't have to agree with everything he's saying here. There are some things he does that I disagree with, and I'll be clear about that as we move forward. But he's defining who gets a revolution, who is a revolutionary, and who's a rebel, who's a traitor, who's a heretic, who's a something else. So we're going to take a look at that a little bit more as well. And then you can determine whether you agree, and why he would include one group or not include another group. I think is a little bit problematic, and I see a few things that he does that I disagree with. I think that he excludes colonial struggles, anti-colonial struggles, in many, many different contexts, through Southeast Asia, through Africa, through South America. He excludes a lot of these anti-colonial struggles, and I think that's a little bit problematic. I would want to have a long conversation with him about that. And he includes the Greco-Roman world, and again, I disagree with that, especially according to the definition that he provides. I don't think that's necessarily something that I would agree with. But again, that doesn't mean I take the book and throw it out the window. You can always throw your books across the room when you get angry. That's fair game. But that doesn't mean that the book is useless. I think that the Jack Goldstone book, while I disagree with some points that he's making, for example, excluding the Haitian Revolution, excluding Algeria, and many other contexts, is problematic. But I still find a lot of use and a lot of productive and constructive aspects of the book that I think can help us think more about revolutions in different contexts. Okay, now finally, when we do work like this in the social sciences or in history or in almost any other discipline, we're engaged in a kind of linguistic exchange, language, symbols, we've got words, that's what we have to communicate. And they are not neutral, right? Words are not neutral. Words are freighted and laden with meaning and also value and sometimes morality. And when we talk about revolutions, most people, I think, in the American context and many other contexts have a positive connotation to revolution in that sense. And we think about human progress also, I think, in a positive sense as well, human progress through the ages. However, there's a lot of room for disagreement, and really substantial disagreement, when we start trying to define what human progress is at different periods of history, and certainly what it means today. That gets into, I think, the heart of a lot of disagreements that are taking place, certainly in the American current political realm. So I think there's a lot for us to discuss, and in terms of looking at the way that language is deployed, we can think about this term teleology, or telos. Telos is Greek for the end, This is a historical fallacy. It's a historical mistake to only tell history from the end, in the sense that you see it as inevitable. You see that this is where everything was headed. Everything was headed toward this revolutionary precipice or pinnacle. And you then start telling that story in a way that has a kind of path determinism or has a kind of inevitability to it. That's called teleology, and it's not a good thing. It means that you fail to see contingency, which is the other side, which is that things could have gone in many, many different ways. So I think it's important when we talk about revolutions that we talk also about teleology and the dangers of telling history in a teleological way. That gets into history, political science, sociology, many, many other disciplines, because there's a tendency to see ourselves at the end of history. And that was a big school of thought in the 1990s when a guy named Francis Fukuyama wrote a book called The End of History. And the idea was that, you know, we've figured it out. We've reached the end of the sort of pinnacle of governing systems. The Cold War is over, and we're all in a capitalist liberal democracy, and everybody's happy, and things couldn't possibly. We're in the best of all possible worlds, sort of like Pangloss, who's from the Voltaire novel Candide. That we live in the best of all possible worlds. I think that sort of Panglossian view of the world has definitely been not only challenged, but I think refuted by the resurgence of authoritarianism in many contexts, including obviously Russia, China, Hungary, a number of other places, but also the United States. And I think that there's much to discuss there in terms of how we think about progress, how we think about reform, and how we think about revolution, and how we define these terms. Who gets included, who gets excluded, in the way that we not only define but also circumscribe or limit our definition of revolution. Okay, so that's the gist of what I wanted to cover in this. This slideshow that I'm using here is in the Canvas a module where you probably found this video. I'm also going to send this out as an email. Please send me any questions. I will remain easy to reach. A few of you have already sent me notes about the class, and I'm very happy to reply to those as quickly as possible. So send any questions. Go ahead and get started on your work if you haven't yet done so, and I will see you in the next video.